I'm Scott Horsburgh, welcome to Yelling Up Steading. Today's DVD is all about how to make and fit your own unique hardware. I'm going to show you the various techniques that I used to make these unique Purple Heart door and drawer handles. I am also going to show you how I have fitted the handles and ensured that my spacings are all consistent and accurate. The techniques that we use to make small, intricate items can be used to make anything. The techniques used to make these handles you can also use to make door catches, door stops, door lifters, anything that's small and intricate you will be able to make quite easily. I hope you enjoy this DVD. Let's get started. This is the piece of Brazilian Purple Heart that I am going to use to make the door and drawer handles. And I'm going to show you exactly how I'm going to do that. This is one piece. It's about 11mm thick. So in starting, I'm just going to take some through shavings to get a nice flat clean surface on this. These pieces here are the horizontal pieces, and they are the tenons that will go into the door. These are the vertical pieces, and these tenons that you see at each end will slot through these nice holes in the horizontal members, and they will protrude out by 2mm and will just round the ends. So they're very easy, they're going to be a lot of fun, and they're going to look beautiful. It'll add a really lovely handmade touch to this piece of furniture. I machined up that piece of Purple Heart after I planed a face side and a face edge, and I've just cut it into two. They are both exactly the same thickness, and it's about 7.4mm. The way I'm going to tackle making these is to try and keep these two pieces as big as possible for as long as possible, so that I have something to hold when I'm working. If I tried to make these individually as small pieces, it would be quite difficult to keep them all uniform and accurate because they're so small, and it's difficult to work with small things. So I'm going to use one piece for the horizontal sections and the other for the vertical sections. And using a marking knife and a square, I'm going to mark these very accurately so that I can then use my router table to take out the sections where the tenons are. That's really the only piece of wood that we need to remove from these, is where the tenons are. So I'm going to come in from each side so that I can then just switch it over and do the other end. Now the tenons are going to be 4mm, so they can fit very snugly into a 4mm hole. Bearing in mind that these are 7.4mm, I want to be left with a tenon of 4mm. So let's make it a little bit oversized, so we can just remove these down and make sure they're a perfectly snug fit, because they will be square and we'll have to round them up. So let's say we leave it at 4.4. That means that we can take 1.5mm off each side of these to be left with a bit in the section in the centre, which will be 4.4mm. That will be perfect. Now we're going to mark these out very carefully to show us where we want to remove the waste, and then we're going to use the router table to remove the waste. Then we will be able to just cut these into sections and then shape them and clean up those little tenons and drill the holes, and it's really not going to take very long to make these. I have cleaned these up on the shooting board. That is, I've just cleaned up both long grain edges, and then I've also shot the end grain on both ends, so that I'm working with something that is nice and true with nice square edges and ends. The tenons on the horizontal members, the ones that go into the door, the tenons are going to be 10mm long. So just to help me, I've set my marking gauge at 10mm, and I'm just going to put a little cut line on each end so that I can then use a square and knife, and they will be uniform. The reason I am marking these out with a knife and creating a knife line is so that when I use the router table, I'm not going to get tear out, because I've already scored the grain and cut it, because I'm cutting across the grain when I go on the router table. So if I didn't have a score in the grain beforehand, there's a chance that I may get some tear out, and I don't want that to happen. I may end up going 1/2 mil shy of the line and then chisel out, or I may just take it straight to the line. So I've selected this edge here as my face edge, and I will do all my marking out off this face edge. So I'm just going to place the square on my face edge, and I can feel the knife into the score mark that I made with the marking gauge. Slide the square up to it, and then I can score a line. So now I have actually cut the grain, so that when I come to remove this waste on the router table, I shouldn't get any tear out. I'm going to do the same at the other end, where I've also used the marking gauge to put a mark. I'll just feed it into the mark, slide the square up, and score that grain. I'm going to do that on both sides, because I'm taking waste from not only the top but also the bottom, so that that tenon is right in the middle. So that's what it looks like after the first cut. So I took 1.5 mil off each face, and I just crept up to the line. I stopped about 1/2 mil shy, and because I had such a beautiful clean cut, I decided to just take it 1/2 mil further and cut right to the line. So there you can see I've got shoulders on both sides. Now these catches are protruding out 30 mil, and I need 16 of these horizontal members, because there's eight pulls, 4 for the door and 4 for the drawers, and there's 2 on each pull, top and bottom. So I'm now going to cut this to length off each end at 30 mil from the shoulder on my docking saw, and then I'm going to reshoot these ends on the shooting board, mark out again, and do that routing again, so I can then get 2 more sections. So before I have cut this on the docking saw, once again, I don't want any tear out. So coming off my face side and my face edge, I have just scored a knife line right the way around the whole piece at each end, so that I can cut safely without fear of tear out, and then I can shoot these on the shooting board. So after using the router table, I have created tenons on all of the pieces that I need. These 4 pieces here will represent the horizontal members that will be going into the doors, and I will get 4 from each. So they're all exactly the same, and these 2 here I will be taking 4 from each of the vertical members. The tenons are all there. So now the next step is I'm going to set a fence on my bandsaw, and I'm going to cut these into their individual components. So 4 from each of these and 4 from each of these. I'm going to use the bandsaw because in cutting small components it gives me greater control. Using the docking saw, I find that when I cut some small things, they have a tendency to fly away and can even get damaged. Using the bandsaw will give me greater control. I will have a rough bandsawn face, but then I'm going to use my shooting board just to clean up the long grain sides and make them all uniform. There are all of the components after we've cut them on the bandsaw. Now we are going to just shoot them and clean up these rough edges that you see here. And I have already shot the end grain, it's nice and clean, so we don't need to worry about that. It's just cleaning these up. Now, if they're not all exactly the same, it's not going to make any difference at all. Part of the beauty, I guess, of having these handmade catches is that they're not all exactly the same. Each one is individual. Shooting them is exactly the same as what we have done previously. So I'm just going to pop it in the board. It's going to be a very quick and easy job. Frequently check it, and you can see that is starting to clean up already, and it's almost there. Once the sides are clean, that's it, because we need to cut shoulders on these tenons anyway. So that is beautiful. I'm just going to flip it over. And do the other side. A couple more. Now what I've decided to do is make the handles on the 2 outside large doors and the 2 outside bigger drawers a little bit bigger than the smaller handles. So using the exact same procedure on the router table, I just prepared some more components. The next step, after we've shot and cleaned up the long grain sides, is to cut this tenon down to the shoulders so we can prepare the nice round tenon. We need to do that on both ends of this vertical piece and also on the 2 horizontal pieces, so when we're creating the mortise for these in the doors, it's just a drill hole. It's very easy. We don't have to chop a square hole. I have a piece of copper here which is about 3mm thick, and I've got 2 holes drilled in it, diameters 3.5mm and 4mm. I'm going to be using the 4mm hole to help me to shape the tenons. So bearing in mind the diameter is 4mm, when it comes to cutting down to the shoulders to create that 4mm, I want to make this just slightly larger than 4mm so that I can then just use a file to round this off and then pop this on. I'll show you exactly how I'm going to do it. So you could mark this out, but because I've done a few, my eye tells me I know exactly where I need to cut this. I'm just using this Japanese saw which has a beautiful fine set and it's very easy to use. So I'm just coming in about 2 mil from the end. I'm going to make that first cut. I'm going to be very careful not to cross the shoulder line. Same again here. Just going to turn it over and do the same on the other end. Now we also need to do this on the horizontal pieces that go into the door. So I'm going to do both of those. And the other one. It doesn't take long, it's very quick to make these handles. They look quite intricate, but they actually don't take a lot of work. So now that we have cut down to the shoulders, the next step is to cut down right along the shoulder line just to remove those bits of waste that we've cut, so that we have a tenon with shoulders all the way around. I'm just going to use a sharp chisel, but before I do that, just to show you so you can try and get these as accurate as you possibly can, one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to use my marking knife and a square, and I'm just going to mark a knife line along the shoulder line here so that I can slot the chisel in there. No guesswork. I think that once you've made a few of these, this step really probably isn't necessary, but just to show you anyway. So I've popped my square along my face side here, and I'm just going to pop the knife up against the shoulder so I can slide the square up to it. And then having a look, I really shouldn't be able to see any shoulder. And I'm just going to mark it with the knife. I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side. Slide the square up, have a look, and just mark a knife line. So that knife line is now where I'm going to sit the chisel. Once you have done that, which only takes a couple of minutes, just using a sharp chisel you can then slot it into that knife line and punch it through with a mallet. Now I'm not going to creep up to this line. I've only got a very small amount to take away. It has been cut already, so I'm just going to punch it and it'll fly off into the workshop somewhere. So I just sit them on my workbench. I am going to just feel the chisel drop into the knife line, hold it vertical, there it goes, and punch it straight down. If you have a look, as I am now, I can see that I'm right on that line. Now, for the other side, I need to find that bit, because I just need to have this supported. I'm going to do exactly the same. Into the knife line, hold it vertical, punch it down, and I can see that I am right on the line with lovely shoulders. So once you've done that, you've got these three components and they all have a nice little square tenon on them. Now I'm going to zoom in and show you this because my tenons aren't straight, but I'm not worried about it. My saw cutting wasn't super accurate, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I can clean this out with the file, but even if it has a slight wobble or angle on it, it's not going to concern me at all. These catches are individual and it will still be perfect. So there they are, and you can see that it's got a nice square end on it. There it is at the other end. So they've just got nice little square ends. And now we are going to file these and use the copper as a guide and turn these into round tenons. Now I just have a normal cheap flat file here. I've got my piece of copper so that I can gauge the hole, and all I'm going to do is just start to file this so that it's round. Any errors that you've had in centering or angle of this tenon can pretty easily be rectified by the file. And once you've done only one, your eye will tell you just how round this needs to be. When you think you're getting close, you can pop the plate on top. Now, I am just going to turn that in a bit like that, because what it does, just let me get it a little bit closer. If I try and really turn this in, it shows you where you need to plane. So by me just pushing that copper plate onto the end, you can see that it's left a little ring mark around the top, which shows me where I need to take wood. So the copper plate gives me guidance. Now I'm going to try it again. Same deal. So I'm not there, but I'm getting close. Have another go. Now I want to show you this. Okay, that is just the end of the tenon coming through the piece of copper. So if you have a look at this now, the top end is nice and accurate, and you can see all these bits of wood flailing out the sides where the copper has pushed them out. So now I can use my chisel or the file to just take that down. I'm just going to take those bits off with the file. I'm going to give this another go. So it's right through and it's pushing down, and there it is. Nice and firm, nice and round. So there you can see with the nice round tenon. Now that will perfectly match a drill bit with a diameter of 4mm. So when I come to drilling a 4mm hole through this piece, that will slot in perfectly and be nice and tight. Now all you want to do is just clean up the shoulders down at the base of that tenon to make sure nothing will hold it off from a nice snug fit. So as I mentioned, I'm just going to use a smaller chisel just to make sure that this shoulder at the base of the tenon is nice and clean so that nothing holds it off from its perfect join. Now all I'm going to do is the other end and these two, and we are just about there. All of the tenons are prepared. So because these tenons here protrude through these pieces that go into the door, all I need to do now to really put it together and have a look at it is to drill a 4mm diameter hole right through each of these horizontal pieces. Now I want them in the same spot, so all I'm going to do is I have a marking gauge set for the position from the end that I would like these to be. And I'm not going to scribe it across, but I'm just going to put a little score mark right in the centre so I know where that is on each one. There we go. And then using my awl, just by sight, I'm going to sit it in that line and pop it right in the centre and just push a little hole for that drill bit to sit into. So now I'm going to take these over to my drill press and I'm just going to drill a 4mm hole straight through. I am going to sit these on some board so that when I punch through the side here, this grain is supported. If I just had it sitting on the drill press in the centre where the drill comes down and there's a void underneath, I would have some push or tear out on this underside. If I sit it on a board and all of this grain is supported, I won't get that happening. So I'm just going to put this together for its first fit. Here it is. It's a beautiful little catch. When you put it together, if you find that some of your spacings are different, that is, when the long rail hits these stubs, if on each side it's slightly different, if you're concerned about that, you can just use your shooting board to tidy up and make things uniform. I'm going to take this apart and I'm just going to give it a very light sand with some 320 and then 400 and put a nice little bevel on the end grain, and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to glue it up. With the tenons where they protrude, you can do whatever you want with them. You can cut them flush, you can round them over, or you can just have a nice little shot end like I am. I'm not doing anything with that. So as I mentioned, I'm just going to give them a light sand now, 320, 400, and take off the edges. I have given these a very light sand, but before I glue it up, the last thing that I'm going to do is just put some cabinet maker's wax all over these, obviously, except for the tenons, because when I glue these together, if I do get a little bit of squeeze out from the tenon, it will squeeze out and it will be on wax, and when it's dried I can just chip it off with a chisel and you'll never know it was there. So I'm just going to give them a light wax, and I'm not concerned about waxing over where this piece will glue in here, because this is end grain anyway and there's really no glue strength there. All of the glue strength is on this tenon going through. So I'm just going to give them a very light wax and then polish them up. This is my glue up procedure for these very small handles. I basically use the vise to hold them like that, and because I've got them held in the vise, I know that they're straight this way. Then I just have 2 pieces of MDF with a 5mm diameter hole, and I just sit them on there, and the hole will just pop onto there, over the tenons where they protrude, and then I clamp together like that. So that way I'm getting even pressure where it counts. Just going to get some glue on the end of the brush, and I'm just going to smear the glue. The only spot is over the tenon. That's the only place I'm going to put it. And I will get squeeze out, but like I said, because they've been waxed, I am not concerned about that. So I'm going to slide that one through. And then this one. I'm going to sit it in the vise, not pinch it for the moment, but just hold it. Pop them on. The last aspect of making and fitting doors is the fitting of the door handle. Now, the handle is currently setting in the vise, the glue is going off, and it will be ready in 1 hour, and then we'll pop it in. But when it comes to the placement of these handles, I want them all to be uniform, so I am just using my pencil gauge, and it's as simple as that. I have a setting that I am happy with, and I'm using the same setting for the measurement in from the side of the door and down from the top. So this is the top of the door, this area here. So all I'm going to do is just pop my pencil gauge on the end and just put a light pencil line like that, and then one off the side. I'm going to bring this one down a bit. Where these pencil lines cross at the top is my top 4mm hole for the door handle. And when it's set, I'm going to pop it on, and I'll show you how to mark out the rest. But that is my first hole. So I'm going to use an awl just to punch that in, so I've got a guide for the drill bit. Now, I've used this setting on all 4 doors, so all of the handles will be uniform and it'll look great. I have a depth stop set on my drill press so that I won't punch through the back side of the door. That would be a disaster. So it's going through a mil over length from the tenons, and it has a depth stop, no problems. So I'm going to just drill this first hole, then I'm going to have some lunch, and when I come back from lunch we'll take this out of the clamp, drill the other hole. After the holes have been drilled for the door, I will finish the door, as in polish it with the carnauba polish that I'm using. Once I'm happy with the finish, I will glue that handle in, and then it's ready to be hung and the doors are finished. The handle is dry. I've just removed the wax with the chisel. I've got this first hole drilled, so all I'm going to do is I can just sit it on top of that, so the tenon is on top of that hole, and because I kept that pencil gauge going down further, I have a line down so that I can just simply line it up, and then all I'm going to do is with my pencil just mark a little circle around that so I know exactly where that second hole needs to be drilled. I'm just going to pop it. And using my awl, I'm going to just create a little punch mark right in the middle of that. So now I'm going to drill right there. Now I'm going to finish this door, and then once I'm happy with the finish that I have, I'm going to glue this in. So when it comes to gluing the handle into the door, with this brush I'm just going to put some PVA into the holes, into the mortices. Then I am going to pop this in. I have a piece of jarrah that I'm going to pop on top so I can bang it home, and then I'm going to pop a clamp going to the underside of the bench so I can put some pressure and pull it down, and it's as simple as that. Here are the door handles made and fitted, and as you can see, they're not difficult to make at all, but they add a really beautiful personal touch to a piece of furniture, and they're very functional. I hope that you've enjoyed watching this DVD and that you've gained a lot from it, and that it's given you the confidence to know that making things like small door handles are not difficult.